I was reborn on my wedding day. Just like in my previous life, before the ceremony could begin, Jiang Shijing's mistress stormed into the Jiang household. She knelt before me, begging for a proper status, offering to present me with the tea of respect. I didn't accept it, only speaking calmly. Let's call off the engagement. Then, under Jiang Shijing's stunned and bewildered gaze, I pointed beyond the crowd to Xiao Yu, the man who, after my death in my previous life, had crawled step by step, kowtowing all the way up the 9,000 steps of longevity, pleading for my rebirth. I wish to marry you. Will you take me? Main text: When Qingshu burst into the wedding hall, I felt a momentary daze. By the time my thoughts returned and I realized I had truly been reborn, she was already kneeling. She wailed tearfully. The general took pity on me, sheltering me at his estate. I know my lowly status makes me unworthy of him. But even as a slave or maid, I beg the general and his lady to show mercy, grant me proper recognition. As she spoke, she hastily picked up the tea from the table and offered it to me. Madam, I beg you. My veil remained unlifted, obscuring both her expression and Jiang Shijing's. All I could hear was Jiang Shijing bellowing orders, drag this raving lunatic away. The hall fell deathly silent. Only the sound of attendants hauling Qingshu out and her heart-wrenching cries filled the air. In my past life, he had acted the same way, hastily ordering her removal. Later, he gave me a flimsy explanation, that he had merely saved her once and she had become clingy. Back then, my heart belonged to him, and I foolishly believed him. Only later did I realize he had deceived me. Because this woman who stormed the wedding hall shared something in common with the concubine he would later dote on excessively. Their faces bore a striking resemblance to the woman Jiang Shijing kept hidden in his heart. At this thought, I let out a soft snort and lifted my veil without hesitation. Amidst the gasps of the assembled guests, I called out to halt them. Wait. I glanced back at Jiang Shijing, his expression a mix of panic and shock, then fixed my gaze on Qingshu, her face streaked with tears. Then, I slowly curved my lips and asked her. Speak. What status do you desire? Jiang Shijing likely hadn't anticipated this question. His eyes widened as he softly called my name, Songli. He whispered to me, What are you doing? I didn't look at him, only at Qingshu, whose expression was frozen in shock. I asked, You want recognition, but young General Jiang says you're spouting nonsense. If you have no proof that you were his concubine, you could lose your life. This statement seemed like a threat, but it was actually a warning. After all, in my previous life, the second time I saw her, she was already a cold corpse. Back then, I never gave much thought to the cause of her death. It wasn't until Jiang Shijing's concubine entered the household and witnessed his methods firsthand. It was through the concubine's warnings that I gradually began to suspect. He had only recently been promoted to deputy general. Serving under my grandfather, he depended on his favor. Naturally, he wouldn't let Qingshu tarnish his reputation and sow discord in my grandfather's mind. To him, these women all resembled the one in his heart. But none were her. They were disposable. But how could I let him have his way? Seeing Qingshu still dazed and not yet recovered, I reminded her once more. You can't produce evidence? Could it be you're lying? At these words, Qingshu immediately shook her head in denial. I'm not. The general has an arrow wound on his chest. She paused, then gritted her teeth and continued, and on his buttocks, there's a red mole the size of an ink dot. Her words sent a ripple of shock through the entire hall. After all, an arrow wound on the chest might be something one could inquire about. But a mark on such a hidden spot as the buttocks? Not just anyone could see that. Jiang Shijing's expression darkened. His complexion, stark against the wedding robes, turned an unnatural shade of dark blue. He glared at me, his chest heaving violently. After a long moment, he ground out through clenched teeth, Songli, we have guests present. This matter can be discussed later. But I refused to listen. I simply guided Qingshu back to the center of the wedding hall and placed her hand into Jiang Shijing's. Since that's the case, I'll take it upon myself to have General Jiang grant you a proper status. However, I paused, glancing at Jiang Shijing, whose face was so dark it seemed water could drip from it, and smiled slowly. However, it seems I won't be able to marry you after all. Jiang Shijing, let's call off the engagement. Jiang Shijing's breath caught abruptly. Songli, do you know what you're saying? His eyes widened in disbelief, a look that was almost comical. And no wonder, to him, until today, it had always been me chasing after him. Indeed, we'd known each other since childhood, and I'd admired him since my youth. When I heard he loved martial arts, I knelt outside my grandfather's door all night, begging him to teach Jiang Shijing the Song family spear technique. Knowing the battlefield was merciless and injuries common, I braved wind and rain to cross half Liangzhou city to study medicine and pharmacology with the most renowned physician in town. Yet even so, he abandoned me twice. The first time, when my cousin Su Jiang and I were captured by bandits, he took Su Jiang away. The second time, a similar scene unfolded. Both his concubine and I were held hostage by Chang soldiers. Arrows flew toward us simultaneously. He swung his sword to deflect the arrow aimed at his concubine. Yet he let an arrow pierce my chest, allowed my face to be slashed, and ultimately let me die. He discarded me like a worn-out shoe. Given a second life, how could I possibly want him? Glancing at Jiang Shijing's stunned expression, I calmly averted my gaze, scanning the crowd. It took little effort to spot him at the back of the crowd, that figure with slightly reddened eyes, holding back overwhelming emotion. I removed the hairpin from my hair, tossed it to the ground, and without hesitation, pushed through the crowd to stand before him. Xiao Yu, today I renounce my betrothal and marry you. Are you willing? Xiao Yu seemed equally unprepared for my sudden question. His eyes widened slightly, his expression dazed, his speech stumbling. You. What did you say? His reaction didn't surprise me. After all, though we knew each other, we weren't truly acquainted. Even after years of acquaintance, we'd exchanged fewer than 20 sentences before today. 3 of those were spoken last night, when I stepped out of the mansion to cool off under the cover of darkness and saw him drunk at the Song residence's gate. That was the first time he'd ever called my name. He said, Songli, you must find happiness from now on. I replied, thank you. Then, belching drunkenly, he murmured it again. Be happy. In my previous life, I hadn't understood the emotion hidden in his words. Not until 3 years after my death, when my spirit drifted beside him. Watching him carve his own flesh and skin to mend my face, whose fate remained unknown. Watching him cradle my corpse to sleep. Watching him crawl step by step, bowing at each, up the 9,000 steps of immortality to beg for my rebirth. Only then did I gradually understand his heart. He had clearly cherished me for so many years, yet hid it so deeply, never letting me know a single bit. Even now, when I asked him directly, he only flushed slightly, unable to meet my eyes. He didn't answer, and I wasn't in a hurry. Amidst the buzzing chatter of the guests, I asked once more, will you marry me? His thin lips parted slightly. This time, he was surely about to answer. But before he could speak, my arm was seized. A sharp pain shot through me, and I grimaced. Turning my head, I met Jiang Shijing's cold, piercing gaze. He declared, Songli, I am the husband who married you into this family. We just exchanged vows moments ago. Jiang Shijing, the young deputy general, possessed a face like carved jade and was strikingly handsome. He was always composed and self-possessed, never letting his emotions show. Even in my previous life, I had never seen him look so dark and foreboding. His chest heaved violently. Though his gaze was fierce, his tone softened as he said, Songli, marriage is no trivial matter. Today is our joyous day. Take back what you said, and we'll pretend nothing happened, okay? His words struck me as rather amusing. To an outsider unaware of the truth, it would genuinely seem as though he was deeply concerned for me. Had I not lived through the events of my past life, I might have been fooled by this display of affection. But now? How could I possibly believe him? I snorted inwardly, about to retort. But then, the hand gripping my wrist was suddenly seized. Xiao Yu stepped forward, interposing himself between me and Jiang Shijing. His grip was iron-hard. I could even see the prominent veins bulging on the back of his hand. Just moments ago, he hadn't dared look at me. Yet now, facing Jiang Shijing, he showed no sign of weakness. His back was turned to me, so I couldn't see his expression. But I could hear his calm, uncompromising voice. "Let go!" Songli said she chose me. Xiao Yu's reaction didn't surprise me in the least. After all, he'd never been one for subtlety. On the contrary, he was deeply calculating, acting outside the bounds of convention. The only thing he excelled at was concealing his feelings, never once causing me distress. Watching his upright, imposing silhouette, my heart stirred slightly. Jiang Shijing confronted him. "Even as a prince, you have no right to forcibly take a subject's wife." I finally couldn't hold back and wrenched my hand free. "Jiang Shijing," I called softly, stepping forward to meet his gaze. "It's not abduction. I'm the one who doesn't want you anymore." Jiang Shijing's expression froze abruptly. He instinctively lunged forward to grab me again, but I stepped back, evading him. His voice sounded urgent through Xiao Yu. "Is it because of this mysterious woman?" "Songli, I can explain." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Mysterious? Explain what? That there's nothing between you and her? That all those secret marks on your body are just her fabrications? Or that her resemblance to my cousin Su Jiang is just a coincidence?" I curved my lips slowly, letting out a soft laugh. "Jiang Shijing, you can deceive yourself, but you can't deceive me. If anything happens to her in the future, I'll take it as proof of your guilt." By the time grandfather arrived upon hearing the news, the guests at the Jiang residence had already dispersed. He'd likely heard the reason before coming. Upon seeing Qingshu, whose features bore a certain resemblance to Su Jiang, he understood everything. He shot Jiang Shijing a cold glance, summoned both him and Xiao Yu to his study, and spoke with them for half an hour. Upon exiting, he informed me to rest assured, the marriage arrangements were temporarily shelved. I returned with grandfather's carriage. Before departure, Jiang Shijing, seemingly unwilling to concede, attempted to follow and call out to me. Xiao Yu stepped forward, blocking his path. I glanced back, catching only his restrained, reluctant gaze, words unsaid. Even after boarding my grandfather's carriage, I could still feel his burning stare fixed upon my retreating back. Truth be told, Qingshu's disruption at today's wedding banquet would likely have been silenced without a trace, just as it was in my previous life, had I not deliberately stirred the trouble. Grandfather surely knew this, yet he did not reprimand me. He has always doted on me. After father's death in battle, he became even more unwilling to let me suffer the slightest injustice. Even now, when I capriciously annulled the betrothal and openly chose another groom at the banquet, he offered no blame. He only asked, "Have you thought this through? Are you truly set on marrying Prince Qi?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I nestled into grandfather's embrace, gently closing my eyes as he soothed me, patting my shoulders and back just as he did when I was a child. Earlier, when I caused such a commotion at the Jiang residence, I hadn't felt the slightest fear. Yet now, hearing my grandfather's strong heartbeat once more, feeling the warmth radiating from his body, a wave of sadness welled up in my nose, and I felt like crying. In my previous life, the Qing kingdom launched a surprise attack, trapping Lanyu Pass. Su Jiang was framed for falsely conveying an imperial edict, ordering my grandfather and Prince Qi, Xiao Yu, to mobilize troops without imperial permission, a capital offense. Then my grandfather was beheaded, and Su Jiang was given a flask of poison wine. After that, I had no family left in this world. In my previous life, my heart and eyes were filled only with Jiang Shijing, causing me to miss out on so much warmth. After that, I was lonely for a long time, and I regretted it for a long time. Until this moment, feeling the warmth of his embrace. Hearing my grandfather, clearly delighted inside, patting my shoulders and back incessantly while pretending to scold sternly, "You're a grown woman now, why are you still acting like a little girl?" Only then did my heart gradually settle. I muttered softly, "I'm not married yet, so I'm not a grown woman." After a long moment, he seemed to let out a soft chuckle. "Fine. Our Song family's young lady, whether it's that Jiang family lad or Prince Qi, you may marry whomever you choose." Though grandfather said I could marry anyone I wished, no one in Liangzhou city dared mock me. But my reputation had never been good. The next day, the scandal, on her wedding day, the primary wife was forced to abandon the marriage by the secondary wife, still spread throughout all of Liangzhou city. The rumors began in the morning. By afternoon, Qingshu was kneeling at the gate of the Song residence. When I emerged, she had been there for quite some time. A crowd of onlookers had gradually gathered around her. I had no idea what had transpired after I left last night. In just one night, she had changed her story, now lying prostrate on the ground, sobbing and pleading. "Yesterday, I falsely accused young General Jiang, ruining your engagement to him. I know I've committed a grave error. I don't ask for your forgiveness, only that you don't turn away from the young general." My eyebrows arched slightly. I understood immediately, she'd come to plead on Jiang Shijing's behalf. After last night's commotion, the entire Liangzhou city had witnessed it. I suspected Jiang Shijing would never take her back, even if he didn't harm her. Grandfather had ordered him not to see me in the coming days. That he'd make Qingshu change her story to explain for him wasn't entirely unexpected. As for how he'd made a mistress bold enough to storm a wedding banquet and demand recognition change her story. Judging by Qingshu's expression, I guessed it involved threats. But whether through coercion or bribery, it no longer concerns me in the slightest. Thinking this, I fixed my gaze on Qingshu kneeling on the ground and said indifferently, "If I recall correctly, early this morning my grandfather ordered the marriage contract and betrothal gifts returned. The young General Jiang and I are no longer connected. Discussing divorce with me, wouldn't that be ruining my reputation?" Qingshu seemed taken aback by my words, her expression momentarily frozen. After a long pause, she finally regained her composure and murmured, But you and young General Jiang clearly." She likely intended to say, clearly shared mutual affection and understanding. Yet, as if recalling something, she abruptly stopped mid-sentence. I suspected she had realized it too. If Jiang Shijing truly cherished me, how could he possibly keep a mistress outside? Her lips trembled as if she wanted to say more, but I cut her off. "Whatever Jiang Shijing sent you to say or do, tell him this: if he comes bothering me again, don't blame me for showing no mercy." I thought my words were clear enough for her to understand. If she were a bit smarter, even trapped in this dilemma by Jiang Shijing's threats, she could still find a way out for herself. After all, she possessed a face strikingly similar to Jiang Shijing's beloved. Yet upon hearing my words, her expression froze abruptly, then she suddenly laughed. Tears still glistened on her cheeks, yet her laughter was maniacal. The sight was deeply unsettling. She kept murmuring over and over, "How could this happen? Why did it turn out like this? He didn't say it would be like this. He lied to me." Then her expression darkened. She glared at me with vicious intensity, her voice hardening. "Going back like this means certain death. Might as well make him taste the agony of unfulfilled desire." With that, she drew a dagger from her sleeve and lunged straight at me. I hadn't expected Qingshu to try to kill me. Even less did I expect her to attack me right at the gate of my Song family estate. The turn of events was so sudden that I reacted almost instinctively, kicking out hard and sending Qingshu crashing to the ground. The Song family has served in the military for generations. Though I am a woman, I have trained in martial arts for several years. While wielding a sword in battle requires careful consideration, dealing with someone like Qingshu, a woman who couldn't even break a chicken's leg, was more than manageable. Falling to the ground, Qingshu seemed unwilling to give up, reaching for the dagger on the floor. But I crushed her hand under my foot, drawing a pained shriek. I narrowed my eyes slightly. I thought, by stepping aside to let Jiang Shijing give you his name, you'd be grateful. Hearing this, she suddenly spat at me. Grateful? Pa. You and he colluded long ago. You just used me to break off the engagement and marry someone else. What making room for me? Don't think I don't know your filthy schemes. You just want me dead. Convinced that I was colluding with the he she mentioned, her emotions boiled over. She pushed me with all her might, trying to rise and grab my throat. Naturally, I wouldn't let her get close. Just as I raised my hand to seize her, her body jerked to a sudden halt. Then she lost consciousness, collapsing to the ground. Behind her stood Xiao Yu, who had appeared without warning. I had been wondering who the he in Qingshu's words could be. Watching Xiao Yu, expressionless, instruct his men to carry Qingshu back to Jiang Shijing's residence, it suddenly dawned on me as if a light bulb had gone off. Of course. Without someone's orders, Qingshu, a powerless woman born to wash clothes, even with Jiang Shijing's lavish favor, could never have been so audacious as to trespass into his residence on his wedding day to demand recognition for herself. It had to be someone else's doing. And that someone had to hold a higher status and command greater authority than Jiang Shijing himself. And in all of Liangzhou City, only 2 people fit that description. One was my grandfather. The other was Prince Qi, Xiao Yu. No wonder she'd said collusion. If I'd witnessed yesterday's scene of the broken engagement and the new choice, I'd likely have instinctively thought the same. I hadn't planned to ask. After all, whether I asked or not made no difference to me. But he hadn't intended to hide it, his gaze meeting mine with open honesty. I'm sorry. Yesterday, I sent her to the Jiang residence. I was somewhat surprised. Xiao Yu's voluntary confession was unexpected. Reflecting now, in my previous life, he must have similarly instructed Qingshu to warn me. Only then, I was not only blinded by the veil but also deceived by Jiang Shijing's lies. Now, watching him clench his fists, clearly anxious yet forcing himself to explain calmly, this mistress has been kept by Jiang Shijing for years. He's defiled, he's unworthy of you. A faint tingle stirred within me. I knew his true nature wasn't the docile, virtuous facade he wore now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have instructed Qingshu to disrupt the wedding banquet. In my past life, he wouldn't have, after my death, ignoring others' pleas, he sealed my body in an ice coffin, clutching it night after night. He even pushed Jiang Shijing to the brink, recklessly driving him into despair. In my past life, I witnessed only his madness and stubbornness. Seeing him tense and anxious now felt strangely novel. I lingered, wanting to observe him longer, delaying my response. But he couldn't hold back. As if throwing caution to the wind, he strode forward in a few strides, his gaze burning into mine. I came today to ask, does your promise to marry me still stand? Xiao Yu was chased away by my grandfather. He'd barely finished asking before my grandfather, who'd rushed back from the training grounds upon hearing the commotion, drove him off, before I could even utter of course it stands. Though grandfather had said last night I could marry anyone I wished, he was no fool. What I could guess, he could guess too. Ever since Jiang Shijing, he'd grown wary of any man near me. On his way back, he'd likely heard the commotion at the Song residence and pieced together the whole affair. Even Xiao Yu, whom he'd once favored, now fell out of his good graces. He even dismissed Xiao Yu with a few words, using the excuse that royal marriages cannot be decided lightly, we must discuss it further in the future. Even as he pulled me back into the mansion and shut the gates, he kept warning me, never trust a man's words. He seemed to have forgotten that last night at the Jiang residence, it was I who pointed at Xiao Yu, declared I wanted to marry him, and asked if he was willing. I knew grandfather only loved me. He feared I might choose poorly again and wanted to test Xiao Yu further. So I complied with his words and stayed obediently at home. I had planned to wait until grandfather calmed down and send Xiao Yu a reply first thing tomorrow morning. But I didn't have to wait until the next day. That very night, Jiang Shijing arrived. Jiang Shijing climbed over the wall to enter. For several years now, he'd always arrive an hour before my birthday, climbing over the wall with wine to celebrate. So when he suddenly appeared in my courtyard, I wasn't particularly surprised. What I hadn't anticipated was him knocking me unconscious without a word. When I awoke, night must have fallen outside. In the unfamiliar room, the lamp flickered. In the corner, Jiang Shijing's expression was hard to make out. It took me a while to gather my thoughts before I slowly sat up. Seeing me awake, Jiang Shijing seemed visibly agitated. He strode over in a few quick steps, reaching for my hand. When I pulled away, he paused, a momentary flicker of surprise crossing his face. His hand remained suspended midair, his eyes already churning with emotion. To an uninformed observer, it would seem I was the faithless one. In my previous life, I had admired him, finding him utterly perfect. But now, seeing him like this, I could only find it slightly amusing. I let out a soft snort. Young General Jiang, to come to the Song residence and openly abduct someone, quite impressive. His throat moved slightly, his expression desolate as he slowly withdrew his hand. Song Li, no matter what I did before, you would at least hear me out. I don't believe you changed overnight. Have you remembered something too? Jiang Shijing's words came abruptly, catching me off guard. I couldn't fathom their meaning and dared not respond rashly. Fortunately, though he asked, he didn't truly expect an answer. He smiled bitterly, sighed softly, and continued to himself, I once had a dream. In that dream, we were married, but I still lost you in the end. I searched for you for so long before finally finding you with Xiao Yu. He spoke as if it were nothing. Yet to my ears, it thundered like a bolt from the blue. My heart pounded wildly in my chest, thoughts swirling until I felt momentarily dazed. Then, a thought flashed through my mind. Could he have reincarnated too? Before I could make sense of it, he continued, I saw Xiao Yu gathering treasures for you. I saw you and Xiao Yu sleeping in each other's arms. He reached out, cupping my chin with one hand. Did he touch you? Where did he touch you? Here? Or here? As he spoke, his other hand slid gently from my cheek down to my shoulder blade. My breath caught, and I shoved him away with all my strength. But even as I pulled back, his words didn't stop. His eyes widened, his expression growing increasingly frenzied. Song Li, is it because after Xiao Yu took you away in the last life, you fell in love with him? So that's why you broke off our engagement and chose him? He accused me of changing my heart, yet never once mentioned his own actions. Finally, I couldn't contain my anger and blurted out, you abandoned me twice. Now you come pretending to be deeply in love? Jiang Shijing, seeing you like this truly disgusts me. Hearing this, his expression froze, then he gave a bitter laugh. So you've reincarnated too. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. His use of so and you too almost confirmed my suspicions. I could roughly guess that my rebirth was due to the 9,000 steps to immortality Xiao Yu had sought. But why Jiang Shijing? My heart skipped a beat. Before I could piece it together, I heard him ask, almost pleadingly, Song Li, this life is different from the last. Those events haven't happened yet. Can we start over? His question, can we start over? Made me want to laugh. In the previous life, I had indeed harbored feelings for him. I had believed he felt the same way about me. Because he would sneak me out of the city to see the Gobi landscape beyond the walls, and he would affectionately stroke my head, calling me Little Miss. But later, when Su Jiang and I ventured outside the city, we were captured by bandits. He could have saved us both if he just held out a little longer. Yet he only took Su Jiang away, leaving me alone in that bandit's lair. That was the first time I killed someone. Even though I fought desperately to preserve my virtue, my reputation was ruined. Out of guilt, he promised to marry me, and he did. But on our wedding night in the previous life, his concubine stormed into the mansion. That night, he sat alone in the bridal chamber, drowning his sorrows in wine until dawn. After that, he never touched me again. In that past life, had I lifted the veil, I could have seen his true intentions and cut my losses in time. But then, my eyes were blinded by the veil, and my heart was blinded by his lies. It wasn't until Su Jiang forged an imperial edict, bringing calamity upon the Song family, that he was sentenced to death. Yet mere months later, he brought home another woman, one bearing 7 or 8 parts of Su Jiang's likeness. He elevated her to concubine, spending every night in her chambers amid revelry. Even when he was transferred to Lanyu Pass, where both I and that concubine were captured, and arrows flew toward us simultaneously, he leapt forward, yet only parried the one aimed at her. Just as he had abandoned me the first time. That time, he had cast me aside without hesitation. He let me be stabbed through the heart, let the Chang chieftain slash my face in a fit of rage, and ultimately let me die. Though all this truly happened, though he surely remembers it, he still deludes himself into thinking he can start over. I find it rather laughable. I couldn't hold back and let out a mocking laugh. Jiang Shijing, you're dreaming. My words seemed to anger him. The moment they left my lips, his eyes darkened. Like a madman, he suddenly pulled me forcefully into his embrace. Without warning, he leaned down and bit my lips fiercely. Only when I tasted the metallic flavor of blood did he ease his grip slightly, snarling, "So it's true, you've fallen for Xiao Yu. But Song Li, don't forget, I am your husband. Rest assured, once I've killed them, we can." He likely intended to say, "We can return to how things were." But before he could finish, his words were cut off by an arrow whistling through the door. The clamor of battle erupted outside, the clash of weapons deafening. Someone reported, "Prince Qi has stormed in with his men." Almost the instant the words left the messenger's lips, Xiao Yu charged in, sword drawn. At the sight of Xiao Yu, Jiang Shijing's expression shifted abruptly. His eyes narrowed slightly, his voice as cold as winter frost. "Your Highness Prince Qi, even as a prince, you cannot trespass into a private residence." Xiao Yu did not respond immediately. His gaze fixed on me. As if noticing the blood at my lip, his breath caught abruptly, veins bulging on his forehead. "I act under General Song's orders to find Lady Song, abducted by bandits. This is no private residence, it's a bandit's lair." With that, he thrust his sword toward Jiang Shijing. Jiang Shijing drew his long sword from its rack to meet the attack. The two fought their way from inside the house to the yard. Both trained under my grandfather, their skills evenly matched. For a time, neither could gain the upper hand. I stepped out of the house and, unnoticed, picked up the sword lying on the ground, weighing it in my hand. Then I slipped behind Jiang Shijing. The moment the blade pierced Jiang Shijing's shoulder, he whipped his head around. "Song Li, you're trying to kill me?" Without easing my grip, I pushed the sword in another inch. "Yes. I've wanted to do this for a long time. I'd longed to make him taste the sting of a sharp blade piercing his flesh. And to make him taste the terror of feeling life slowly slip away." My answer must have caught him off guard. His body stiffened, then his tone softened abruptly. "Song Li, you clearly like me." I only sneered. "Qing Shu must have told you, if I see you again, don't blame me for showing no mercy." After that, I leaned closer and whispered in a voice only we could hear, "Want to start over? Do you know how I died in my last life? I was killed by that arrow in my chest, I died in agony." Jiang Shijing's expression was priceless. His eyes widened, filled with disbelief and regret. After a long moment, he murmured like a madman, "I'm sorry. Rest assured, I'll avenge you." Once I've avenged you, we can go back to how things were before, right? I didn't answer. Only after he was escorted away did I lose control, my hands trembling. When the blade fell, I didn't hesitate. But I feared blood. Ever since that first kill, the fear had taken root. That crimson hue haunted my dreams night after night, suffocating me in its grip. Now, my hands, drenched in Jiang Shijing's blood, felt as though scalded by boiling oil, a terrifying, searing pain. I frantically wiped them on my clothes, trying to cleanse the stain, only to smear it worse. In my frantic panic, my hand was suddenly grasped. Snapping back to awareness, I found myself staring into Xiao Yu's unfathomable eyes. He said, "Sister, don't be afraid." Those seemingly ordinary words held a strange magic, slowly calming me. Only then did I notice a subtle, almost imperceptible emotion flickering beneath his calm gaze. His gaze swept over my face, inch by inch, finally settling on my lips. Then, suddenly, he reached out and pressed his finger lightly against the corner of my mouth. The unexpected movement made me gasp in surprise. Before I could recover, he leaned in and kissed me. In my past life, Xiao Yu had kissed me too. But back then, I was already near death. My spirit had floated in midair, watching like a bystander. I watched him cradle my face with almost reverent care, suppressing overwhelming emotion as he pressed a light kiss to my lips. A fleeting touch before he pulled away. Completely different from now. This time, he seemed desperate to erase the imprint Jiang Shijing had left, or perhaps urgently needed to prove something. His movements were awkward and impatient. Only when he heard my muffled groan of pain did he suddenly stiffen. After a long moment, as if waking from a dream, he pulled me tightly into his embrace and whispered, "I'm sorry." His head was buried in my shoulder as he spoke. I could feel his breath on my skin, a warm, damp mist. Though I was the one who'd survived a catastrophe, and should have been the one trembling, his body shook more violently than mine. Though it was the same kind of kiss, this time I felt no revulsion like when Jiang Shijing touched me. Instead, my heart softened. I couldn't help but sigh softly and reached out to pat his back. Perhaps soothed by this gesture, his emotions gradually calmed, and he released me only after a long while. Still, his eyes remained bloodshot, and his tone was laced with ferocity. He said, "I should have killed him with a single sword strike after all." Then, in a voice that sounded almost like a spell, he asked, "Shall I go kill him now?" When Xiao Yu spoke these words, his voice was hoarse to the extreme. Though his words were harsh, I somehow heard a hint of hurt in them. In my memory, it seemed like in my previous life, when he had just rescued me from the battlefield, he had also intertwined our fingers, playing with my hand, and asked me in the same tone, "Why not me? Sister, why didn't you choose me?" Back then, I could no longer answer him. I could only listen to his rambling. "If it were me, I wouldn't betray you like he did, but you just don't like me. If only the one you loved were me." That was the first time I witnessed his genuine emotions. At the time, shock was all I felt. But hearing it now, my chest feels filled with something, a tingling sensation. I knew his words, "Kill Jiang Shijing," were no jest. Because after I died in my past life, he truly went mad, hunting Jiang Shijing down. By then, he'd been stripped of his title and imprisoned in Yunzhou. Yet he defied the ban, journeying alone to Lanyu Pass. In that battle, he failed to kill Jiang Shijing and suffered severe wounds himself. Later, still burdened by those wounds, he went to the eternal steps of Qianfu Mountain. Step by step, bowing his head, he prayed for my rebirth. Just watching him, I felt the pain myself. Now, though he is a prince, Jiang Shijing is a deputy general appointed by the court. Murdering commoners is already a grave crime, how much more so for a court official? I didn't want him to risk himself, so I shook my head. "The matter between me and Jiang Shijing, I will handle it myself." Hearing this, his expression froze momentarily. He stared intently at me for a long while, seemingly trying to fathom the meaning behind my words. After a long pause, he suddenly broke into a smile. "All right, whatever you decide, sister." Though I told Xiao Yu I'd handle it myself, I actually had no concrete plan. Despite knowing Jiang Shijing for years, I understood nothing about him. I wasn't even sure what revenge he spoke of, what exactly he sought vengeance for. My heart was heavy with worry, fearing he might return. After returning to the mansion, I had people keep a close watch on the Jiang residence. However, after escaping that night, he did not return to Liangzhou City. For over half a month, no one had seen him. Then, suddenly, military reports arrived. He had colluded with the Chang forces, planning to breach Lanyu Pass and march on the capital. No one could have imagined Jiang Shijing would ally with the Chang. Not only the people of Liangzhou City, but even my grandfather was astonished. But now, looking back, I wonder if it was because of my rebirth. The circumstances of this life were indeed different from the last. In my previous life, turmoil erupted in the court before my wedding to Jiang Shijing. Prince Yong, Xiao Yu, was assassinated while overseeing disaster relief efforts. Shortly thereafter, the eldest prince of Chang launched a surprise attack at Lanyu Pass. Then, Lanyu Pass was besieged. My cousin Su Jiang was framed, arriving with that forged imperial edict ordering grandfather and Xiao Yu to mobilize troops. The entire affair had nothing to do with Jiang Shijing. But in this life, the court remained largely quiet. Prince Yong merely fell ill for several months. Cousin Su Jiang also did not marry Prince Huayaz in the previous life, but instead with the sixth prince, Xiao Shun. It was Prince Huai, however, whose collusion with the Chang army was exposed, leading to his title being stripped. The reason for the Chang army's surprise attack was even twisted into Jiang Shijing betraying the enemy. Though the circumstances differed across the two lifetimes, my grandfather remained the same as before, determined to mobilize troops for reinforcements even without an imperial decree. This time, however, he had barely mustered his troops when Xiao Yu had him bound. I heard Xiao Yu ordered that my grandfather remain bound until the fighting ceased. I also heard that from the moment he was captured, my grandfather cursed incessantly. He accused Xiao Yu of settling personal scores and disregarding military orders. He even vowed that one day he would beat the living daylights out of that brat. Yet the brat he spoke of had already led his troops alone toward Lanyu Pass. Xiao Yu's departure was abrupt, without so much as a farewell. He only sent me a painting. The painting was quite old, its paper slightly yellowed. It depicted a young girl galloping through an apricot blossom grove. She wore a jade-green silk robe and skirt, her smile radiant. The inscription bore 4 small characters, "First encounter with Songli." The moment I saw the painting, my heart skipped a beat. Because I clearly remembered that the person I met in the apricot grove all those years ago was Jiang Shijing. My first meeting with Xiao Yu, however, occurred at a banquet hosted by my grandfather for his old friends. I still remember, I was 11 that year. My grandfather's former comrades in arms, traveling through Liangzhou with their families, had stopped by. As the host, my grandfather had invited them to dine at our home. It was at that banquet that I first saw Xiao Yu. Back then, I didn't know he was a prince. His nature was quite different from now, somewhat quiet, shy, and reserved. Even when his maternal grandfather urged him to call me sister, he only flushed red, never uttering a word. During those days, I had injured my head while horseback riding in the apricot grove, suffering temporary blindness and feeling rather low. I made only a brief appearance at the banquet before hastily returning to my room, never even catching a proper glimpse of him. It wasn't until the following autumn, when he came from the capital to Liangzhou and entered my grandfather's service, that we gradually became acquainted. Though we were acquainted, it wasn't truly so, merely that our meetings grew more frequent. Later, as I grew older, our meetings dwindled due to the propriety between men and women. The memory of him that lingered deepest in my mind before my death in my previous life. It was the day before my marriage to Jiang Shijing, when he called out to me, drunk yet restrained and polite. He urged me to find happiness. My memory was undeniably clear. Yet, gazing at this painting, an almost absurd suspicion rose within me. Xiao Yu was the one who saved me in the apricot grove and carried me back to the city, not Jiang Shijing. Once the doubt took root, it spread like a raging flood, unstoppable. I refused to wait any longer. That very afternoon, I saddled a swift horse and rode toward Lanyu Pass. Liangzhou lay close to Lanyu Pass, and along the way, I encountered more and more refugees fleeing the chaos. Upon entering Lanyu Pass territory, I could see everywhere, the earth stained crimson with blood, corpses strewn across the ground. I had seen battlefields before, I knew what they looked like. But even knowing that, seeing it again still sent a chill through my heart. Before I even reached the battlefield, the clanging of swords and the sounds of combat echoed from afar. Panic gripped my heart as I spurred my horse forward. Daring not to approach too closely, I could only circle cautiously at the battle's edge. After searching for a long time, I finally spotted Xiao Yu and Jiang Shijing locked in confrontation. Xiao Yu was covered in blood. Jiang Shijing leaned close to his ear, whispering something. Then, with a fierce thrust, the spear in his hand suddenly pierced through Xiao Yu's shoulder. Though the sky was bright and sunny, I heard the rumble of thunder. Watching Xiao Yu's body slowly collapse, I almost instinctively drew my bow and aimed at Jiang Shijing. My aim was never reliable, but this time, the arrow struck him precisely. Yet the distance was too great, his wound was shallow. He even pulled the arrow out with a backhand motion, turning to look at me. His gaze was fierce. Seeing it was me, his face twisted in disbelief. Then, with a spear thrust, he parried the soldier lunging at him and charged forward, his teeth clenched as he snarled, "Do you hate me that much? Because of Xiao Yu, you want me dead?" At that moment, drenched in blood, he resembled a demonic specter. A single glance was enough to strike fear into anyone. "Of course I do." I drew another arrow and bent the bowstring. But this shot, fired in the heat of emotion, missed its mark. He parried it with his spear. He stepped forward, clamped his hand on my jaw, forcing me to meet his gaze. His voice was venomous. "Do you know why we were ambushed en route to Lanyu Pass in our past life? Why, after I was forced back by the Chang army, Xiao Yu took you away immediately afterward? Because that battle at Lanyu Pass was orchestrated by him all to get his hands on you." I clenched my teeth, refusing to speak. He continued, "And in our past life, when Su Jiang falsely claimed an imperial edict, bringing calamity upon your Song family, that too was a scheme devised by Prince Xiao Yu of Huai to bring him down. Song Li, Xiao Yu and the Xiao clan are the true culprits who brought this upon you. Killing him will avenge your suffering." Indeed, after the false imperial edict scandal in my previous life, my grandfather was executed, Xiao Yu was demoted, and Prince Xiao Yu of Huai soon ascended to crown prince, emerging as the greatest beneficiary. His words weren't without basis. But my grandfather and Xiao Yu had long anticipated this. Yet they chose to mobilize troops anyway, fully aware it was a path to certain death. Because the court could wait, but the people could not. Each day delayed meant more innocent lives lost. In my previous life, my grandfather said on his deathbed that as a member of the Song family, he had no regrets about that decision to mobilize. His heart was with the people of Great Yu, his ambition was its peace and stability. Xiao Yu inherited that resolve, never wavering from his original intent. Thus, in this lifetime, he chose once more to mobilize troops without imperial decree. Jiang Shijing, attempting to sow discord, couldn't even find a plausible excuse. Reflecting on this, I couldn't help but snort lightly. "Jiang Shijing, is this your justification for colluding with the enemy and betraying the nation? If that's truly the case, I'd rather see you die here today." As if provoked by my words, Jiang Shijing's expression suddenly darkened. "Colluding with the enemy? Do you think I wanted this? Xiao Yu forced me. Do you know what he did? And you defend him like this?" His tone softened abruptly, pleading, "I did all this for you, Song Li. I can't turn back now. Can we go back to how things were before?" His current state only amused me. For me? So when Su Jiang and I were captured by bandits, you deliberately didn't save me? So in the past life, when I and your concubine were taken prisoner, you abandoned me? Jiang Shijing's expression grew increasingly rigid under my barrage of questions. I ignored it, staring intently into his eyes. Jiang Shijing, answer me, that day in the apricot grove, when I fell from my horse, was it truly you who caught me? At these words, he froze abruptly. His face, only moments ago slightly stiff, now paled instantly. His eyes widened, his expression defeated. After a long moment, he murmured, you know. Seeing him like this, what else could I not understand? I had always believed that when I fell from my horse in the apricot grove, it was Jiang Shijing who saved me. I was 11 that year. Because my father hadn't kept his promise to accompany me flying kites, I sulked and rode alone to the apricot grove on the outskirts of the city. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving the city that day. I wanted to hide, hoping my father would set aside his bowels and worry about me for once. But when I reached the grove, the horse was stung by bees and bolted. I was too weak to hold the reins. As I flew through the air, I thought I was going to die. But I didn't. In the chaos, someone leapt forward and caught me. We tumbled several times across the ground before finally coming to a halt. With someone cushioning my fall behind me, I escaped serious injury. But during the tumble, my head struck a rock, causing me to briefly lose consciousness. When I awoke, I was already on that person's back. The blow to my head must have damaged a nerve, for darkness enveloped my vision. Though blinded, I sensed the carrier was short, likely a youth my age. He remained silent throughout the journey. Terrified, I cried incessantly, too distraught to notice anything else. Vaguely, I recall touching his damp right shoulder and hearing his stifled gasps. I guessed he'd been injured saving me. But no matter how I pressed him, he remained silent. That day, he placed me at the gate of the Song residence and slipped away without a word, leaving not even his name behind. I believed I would never find the savior who had rescued me. Yet a year later, I happened to glimpse the scar on Jiang Shijing's shoulder. I never imagined I could mistake him for someone else. Because when I asked Jiang Shijing, he did not deny it. His silence allowed me to indulge my feelings, to surrender completely. Little did I know, I was mistaken from the very beginning. Now, Jiang Shijing's face held a panic I'd never seen before. His voice was hoarse, as if he were trying to explain. Songli, I'm sorry. At first, I considered denying it. But back then, I'd already fallen for you, driven by selfish desire. By the time I came to my senses, it was too late. Do you know? Every time I saw you looking at me, the intensity and depth in your eyes always reminded me that you loved someone else. The more you showed affection for me, the more it hurt. Sometimes I wondered, if I were like you, with someone else in my heart, would you feel the same way I did? But I didn't want to hear another word. This time, I held back not a single ounce of force. The dagger hidden in my sleeve plunged cleanly into his chest. His words cut off mid-sentence. He stiffened, then suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Even as he fell, he murmured, I truly regret it. I'd begged for that eternal life step too. I leaned close to his ear and whispered, Jiang Shijing, I regret it too. I regret ever having feelings for you. With that, I turned away. Picking up the spear that had fallen to the ground, I strode resolutely into the battlefield. I had never fought in battle before. In 2 lifetimes, this was the first and only time I had taken a life, back when I was trapped in that bandit stronghold. But this time was different. Back then, my heart was filled only with despair and fear. But now, my sole desire was to swiftly repel the Chang army and reach Xiao Yu. I thought my meager skills wouldn't last long enough to reach him. Yet reinforcements arrived unexpectedly fast. Just as I entered the fray, Su Jiang and the sixth prince arrived bearing the imperial decree transferring troops to Liangzhou and reinforcements. This battle was won without a shred of doubt. In less than an hour, the Chang army was routed and forced into retreat. Amidst deafening cheers, I staggered toward Xiao Yu. Only when I felt the warmth on my nose and confirmed he was still alive did my heart finally settle. Xiao Yu was gravely wounded. Beyond the gaping hole in his shoulder, a long gash ran from his shoulder blade down to his waist. Having studied medicine, I had often tended to Jiang Shijing's battlefield injuries in the past. Thus, brewing and administering medicine, treating wounds, these tasks came to me with practiced ease. Even so, the moment I slipped off his clothes, my heart clenched painfully. Not only because of that gash running from his left shoulder to his right abdomen, but also because, among the scars covering his back, there was a flawless patch of skin at his waist. In my previous life, after Jiang Shijing rescued his concubine, the Chang army, seeking vengeance, sliced off a piece of my face. By the time Xiao Yu found me, my consciousness was already fading. My soul had even left my body, watching as my physical form sank into unconscious slumber. The doctor said I needed rest. To treat my face, he claimed, required a fresh piece of human skin. That doctor was nothing but a charlatan. Anyone with eyes could see I was dying. Yet he still swindled Xiao Yu into spending money. And Xiao Yu believed him. Without a second thought, he ordered someone to carve out the last intact patch of skin from his back. At that moment, I thought, how could there be such a fool in this world? His eyes were red with pain, yet he gritted his teeth and never called for it to stop. I also thought, I was nearly dead. How could I ever repay the debt of kindness I owed him? Thankfully, heaven took pity and granted me a second life, so I wouldn't betray his deep affection. Xiao Yu's injuries were too severe, he remained unconscious for days. Fearing he might suffer a fever-induced seizure, I kept vigil by his bedside for days on end, never daring to leave. It wasn't until the 7th morning that I awoke to find myself, somehow, moved from the couch to the bed. Xiao Yu, who had been unconscious for days, was now leaning over the bedside, twirling a strand of my hair between his fingers. Seeing me awake, he curved his lips into a faint smile, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "Sister, you're awake." That word sister rolled off his tongue effortlessly. Just like in my past life, when he'd whisper it while holding me close. Truthfully, I should have guessed long ago. From the first time he called me sister. From the moment he captured my grandfather and chose to lead the troops alone to reinforce us. Even from the moment he asked if I truly chose him. I should have realized he had also been reborn. Yet, overwhelmed by the succession of events, I never once considered that possibility. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. Just as I was about to ask, "Does your wound still hurt?" I suddenly heard him say, "I'm sorry." The apology came abruptly. Before I could react, he continued, "The battle at Lanyu Pass was orchestrated by Huai Xiao Yuntong colluding with the Chang kingdom. Jiang Shijing did not betray his country or rebel. I forged the letter from the Chang crown prince to lure him to Lanyu Pass. He held nothing back, recounting in meticulous detail how he had lured Jiang Shijing to Lanyu Pass and forged the military orders. He even revealed, without concealment, his intent to kill Jiang Shijing. He likely expected me to be furious. As he spoke, his gaze remained fixed on the tassels of the bed curtains, unable to meet mine. His fists clenched tightly, his breath shallow. Seeing him so cautious and guarded, my heart softened. Days prior, I'd heard from Su Jiang that the former Prince of Huai, Xiao Yu, had escaped from the Supreme Court of Justice and conspired with the Chang kingdom to rebel. Recalling Jiang Shijing's dying words, I'd already guessed Xiao Yu had orchestrated everything. He was never the gentle, harmless man he appeared to be. On the contrary, he was deeply calculating. He had calculated that Xiao Yu would conspire with the Chang army to rebel. He had calculated that Jiang Shijing would seek to overthrow the Xiao dynasty and ally with the Chang forces. He had calculated that reinforcements would arrive with orders. He had even calculated that I would be angry. So he confessed voluntarily, deliberately appearing weak, and climbed onto the bed. Like a wolf cub marking its territory, he wrapped his arms around me, burying his head in the crook of my neck. He murmured softly, "Sister, my wound hurts so much. Hold me." Just like in my past life, when he'd been skinned and carved, writhing in agony, he'd whispered the same words in my ear. My eyes stung with unshed tears. I sighed softly and sat up, pulling that strand of hair from his grasp. Towering over him, I looked straight into his eyes. He seemed slightly displeased by my action, yet only frowned faintly, daring not to move. "Xiao Yu." I called his name softly, cupping his face with both hands to make him meet my gaze. His eyes flickered, his thin lips pressed tightly together. After a long moment, he finally murmured a soft, "Mm." I wanted to tell him that after I died in my past life, my spirit had stayed by his side for many years. I wanted to tell him that I, like him, had been reborn. I also wanted to ask if he was the youth who saved me in the apricot blossom grove all those years ago. I wanted to ask why he had remained silent back then, leading me to mistake him for someone else for so many years. But as 1,000 words gathered at my lips, only one emerged. "Didn't you ask me last time if my wish to marry you still stood?" His expression faltered at my words. Emotions churned in his eyes as he gazed at me, brimming with hope. He asked cautiously, "Does it still stand?" I leaned down and pressed a kiss to his lips. Then, lifting my head, I slowly curved my lips into a smile as he stared at me, stunned and delighted. "It still stands. Let's get married, Xiao Yu." Extra chapter: Xiao Yu had only just rested when Su Jiang arrived carrying wine. Her husband in this lifetime stood not far away, watching intently. Su Jiang pretended not to notice, handing one flask to me. She took another, tilted her head back, and took a swig before asking, "I hear His Royal Highness Prince Qi also sought the eternal steps at Qinfu Mountain." As she spoke, her gaze flickered toward the sixth prince, Xiao Shun, standing nearby. Just a single glance. The sixth prince, with his striking features, lit up, his eyes sparkling as he laughed carefree. Su Jiang saw it too. She slowly curved her lips. Her eyes and brow were filled with affection. This was entirely different from her sorrowful expression when she brought that fake imperial edict in her previous life. That single word also made everything clear to me. It seemed that although the brothers of the Xiao family had different personalities, their foolishness was strikingly similar. I withdrew my gaze and couldn't help but sigh softly. Yes, he also sought it. Su Jiang wasn't surprised by this answer. Yet upon hearing it, she suddenly furrowed her brow and murmured softly, "Sister, those 9,000 steps to immortality cannot be begged for rebirth." I froze slightly. The next moment, I saw her gaze fall upon the sixth prince, her eyes softening. The Buddha does not save all beings, he only saves those bound by karma. Rightful bonds and ill-fated ones are merely parts of that karma. As she spoke, she suddenly turned to look at me. She was the most free-spirited woman in our Song family. Yet as she said this, a faint trace of sorrow still lingered at the corners of her lips. She said, "Rebirth might only be what we imagine. Everything before our eyes might also be an illusion. When karma arises, it becomes cause and effect. When karma ends, all becomes emptiness, mere mirror flowers and water moons." Her words held truth. Yet I no longer wished to dwell on such matters. I sighed softly, raised the wine flask, and invited her to drink with me. Whether rebirth is real or but a mirage, whether it's genuine or false, what does it matter? This moment, the wine in my hand is real, the person before me is real, and the affection in my heart is real. That is enough. The day Xiao Yu proposed, the spectacle was grand. 180 palanquins carried the dowry, nearly half more than what Jiang Shijing had brought when he proposed. He paraded the gifts through most of Liangzhou city, as if announcing it to the world. Almost without needing to spread it deliberately, the rumor Prince Qi seeks to marry the Song family's daughter spread throughout Liangzhou City. The wedding date was set hastily. Originally, grandfather, still fuming over the kidnapping incident, intended to keep him waiting longer. But he seemed prepared. On the day of the proposal, he brought not only the betrothal gifts but also an imperial decree of marriage bearing the crown prince's seal. On the wedding day, the procession stretched 10 li in crimson splendor. I didn't wait long before he stumbled into the bridal chamber, reeking of wine. The moment I lifted my veil, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Whether it was the wine or not, the corners of his eyes were faintly reddened. His gaze burned intensely, fixed on me for a long moment before he snapped out of it. His words were half question, half sigh, "Sister, my whole life feels like a dream." I said nothing, only tiptoed to press a light kiss to his lips, touching and parting in an instant. And now? Is it still a dream? His breath caught abruptly, his gaze suddenly burning. The next moment, he pulled me into his embrace and leaned down. Warmth brushed my ear as his breath grew heavy. Whether it's a dream or not, tomorrow will tell. Yes, whether it's a dream or not, tomorrow will tell. The crimson candles warmed the canopy, this night stretched on. This life, too, still stretches on. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next chapter.